All right, welcome back, everyone. And really grateful for our panelists being here. Hello, Marissa, John, Kathryn, Adrian, and Taylor, Italia. Excellent. I had to move my screen to see you all. Beautiful. All right, well, thanks also for everyone who's commenting in the chat with their preferred textile. It's really inspiring to see how many creative and natural fiber synthesizing people we have here. And I am excited to introduce the facilitator of this panel, colleague and friend, Adrian Rodrigues. Hi, Adrian. So this panel is focused on the theme of regionally grown, regionally made, regionally worn. And we know that the system that I just described that doesn't fully function soil to skin in the ways that ideally we would like it to yet. And we also have just explored the reality that many aspects that do exist in the system, whether it's the agricultural system or the current cut and sew system, as expressed with the piece rate workforce, that these things need to improve, modify, change, be enhanced, amended, for us to feel like we can actually contribute to a future, so that these systems are contributing to a future that we all want to actually be a part of and on a living, thriving planet. So the architecture, business architecture is so important to how we design these new systems, as we saw in the last conversation with Annie and Santa and Mel. And so this panel is designed to discuss some of that architecture, but also some of the talent that is wanting to create this very regional system, and a healthy and vibrant one at that. So facilitating the conversation today is Adrian. Adrian is the co-founder and managing director of Provenance Capital Group, where he helps develop blended capital structures that catalyze resilient biological systems and businesses. Before Provenance, Adrian co-founded the boutique consulting firm Hyphae Partners, where he helped companies finance and build regenerative business models. Additionally, he worked at Patagonia with its venture capital arm, Tin Shed Investors, helping author a standard for regenerative organic ag and exploring regenerative organic land funds. He's an experienced asset allocator, a fundraiser, and a business model innovator. Adrian has spent 6 years at Morgan Stanley, helping longtime Horizon investors manage their asset allocations and diligent investments opportunities across asset classes and sectors. He also lectured on food innovation at the University of California, Berkeley's Haas School of Business, and designed and taught an entrepreneurship intensive for farmers at Stone Barn Center for Food and Agriculture. He's a graduate of Berkeley's Haas full-time MBA program. At Haas, Adrian was a portfolio manager of the Haas Socially Responsible Investment Fund and a member of the Center for Responsible Businesses Student Advisory Board. And he received his Bachelor of Arts in English from Williams College, studied English literature at Exeter, Oxford, and he holds the Chartered Financial Analyst designation. He's an avid chef, backyard farmer, and budding yogi. And colleague of mine that I am so honored. The Regional Fiber Manufacturing Initiative that he will describe is something that FiberShed launched in 2020, and it is with the skills and acumen of Adrian and team that is helping us rebuild. Thank you, Adrian. And I will hand it over to you and team, panel.
Hey, Adrian, it's Gavin, just from FiberShed producer. I'll be texting you in the background just to keep you on time and let you know about questions. Just wanted to let you know. So have your mobile phone just around there. Try not to bug you, but it looks like a fantastic panel.
Wonderful. Thank you, Gavin. And Rebecca, thank you so much for those kind words and warm introduction. It's been an absolute pleasure working with you for the last 3 years and looking forward to many more exciting things to come. And a larger thank you to the FiberShed team for working around the clock to put together this symposium. I personally look forward to this event every year and appreciate the hard work that went into creating the sense of community that permeates every FiberShed event. So thank you, Rebecca. Thank you, team. Before we jump into our panel today entitled Regionally Grown, Regionally Made, Regionally Worn, I wanted to situate the panel in the larger arc of the conference. Day one's panelists highlighted the detrimental impacts of plastic in the textile industry and the falsehood of claims suggesting that plastic fibers are the most ecological fibers one could choose. Day two's panelists showed the correlation between healthy soils and healthy seas, specifically how regenerative textile production can stop and reverse much of the environmental degradation we have seen in both land and aquatic systems. Today's panel is focused on how do we transition from an extractive textile economy that depletes our natural and human capital bases to a regenerative textile economy that re-regionalizes the production of textiles in a way that supports local economies and contributes to climate change solutions. You know, from my perspective, as inequality continues to grow and the impacts of climate change become ever more palpable, it can seem like this lofty goal of transitioning from an extractive economy to a regenerative economy isn't realistic. But I encourage each of you to read the new book entitled The Upswing by Robert Putnam and Shaylin Romney Garrett. For you sociology buffs out there, you might remember Robert Putnam from his groundbreaking book, Bowling Alone, which recounts the deterioration of social capital in American towns. The Upswing discusses how human societies swing between societies focused on the individual and the collective. And in the book, Robert and Shaylin make the argument that we're seeing many similarities between our current moment and the peak of the Gilded Age, the epitome of the I society, and that we are about to swing and see the pendulum swing much more towards a we society. So I really think it's a very hopeful moment with the election behind us, and I think that we have a lot of momentum behind our movement, and we also have a lot of hard work that pioneers like Rebecca and other people in this space have been building for decades, and I think we might get our time in the sunlight to really have this bloom and become the way we reinvent our economy. I'm honored to be joined by people who are doing this day in and day out. We have Italia Hannaway from Italia A Collection. We have Taylor J from Taylor J Collection. We have Marissa Nuncio from the Garment Worker Center. We have John Long from the Carolina Textile District, Kathryn Ervin from the Industrial Commons, and myself, Adrian Rodrigues. The flow of our session today is going to start with an introduction to FiberShed's Regional Fiber Manufacturing Initiative, something that the FiberShed team has been hard at work for the last year. Next, we're going to move into an introduction of our panelists, where each panelist will get a chance to share a bit about their backgrounds, their work, and what they're excited about. We're going to move into moderate Q&A after that, and then we're really excited to open up to the larger audience to see what questions there are amongst everyone who's in attendance. So before I jump into the Regional Fiber Manufacturing Initiative, given my role in the financial markets, I just have to share a quick disclaimer. Our discussion today should not be construed as a sale of a financial product or investment advice. Please consult your investment advisor before making any investments. So with that, I'm going to share my screen and walk you through a couple slides that help give some context around the Regional Fiber Manufacturing Initiative. All right, I think everyone can see this. I'm going to jump in. So when we started architecting the Regional Fiber Manufacturing Initiative, we were really centered on a confluence of forces that wanted to see re-regionalization happen. That was reducing the footprint of fast fashion, rebuilding regional economies, a demand for authenticity and craftsmanship, and a push for circular and regenerative production. And we really wanted to build on the decade-long history of FiberShed to figure out how can we create a multi-stakeholder initiative that enables, empowers, and furthers FiberShed's legacy through the development and implementation of enhancements to the West Coast fiber ecosystem. Our core focus areas of the RFMI are ecosystem mapping and prioritization. We think in systems, we do not think in linear pieces, and we do not just focus on one part of a linear system, but our goal is to really think about how the system at large works. How do we set the system up for success and not treat symptoms of the problem? We also need to engage the investment community to change the way that they think about investing in this space, and in particular, a movement away from short-term profit maximization to long-term value creation. We also think about incubator and ecosystem support. How can we offer business and engineering technical assistance to people that need it in a way to amplify and accelerate their work? We also help with coming up with a pipeline of investable opportunities and to help investors do due diligence on them. We recruit talent and to make sure that we have a pipeline of future fiber workers. And we also help with consulting to make sure people have the right subject matter experts to lean on. When we think about the Regional Fiber Manufacturing Initiative, it's structured with a stewardship committee, which me and my wonderful partner, Nicholas Wenner, help co-chair. Nick's an amazing engineering expert. We also have 5 committees. We have an Equity and Justice Committee, a Material Production Committee, a Manufacturing Committee, a Consumer Connections Committee, and a Business Services Committee. And we really wanted to make sure that we are being informed by leaders in each part of the supply ecosystem and making sure that we're taking this systems level approach that's informed by the members of the ecosystem. In thinking about how we used our time this year, the first part of the year was really understanding what the ecosystem looked like, mapping out what existed, and figuring out where were the most pressing gaps that are preventing the flow of domestic textile production. We then looked at those gaps and we figured out how can we help fill them in a way that benefits the overall ecosystem. We've engaged our committees. We've started offering engineering and business technical assistance to the enterprises that showed the most ability to help the ecosystem at large. And looking into next year, we're going to help those entities raise money. One of the key things that we did this year was come up with a database of over 35 investable fiber opportunities. I can see that growing to 100 to 200 next year. And one thing that we want to be very open about is that this is a start, but we want everyone to be part of this. And if you think there's a way that we can help you, please let us know. And we're really making sure that we're casting a wide tent to include everyone in this movement. When we look at our ecosystem mapping, just to show you how we're looking at it, this is a schematic that shows what exists at an industrial, artisanal scale in the West when it comes to fiber production. As you can see, wool has the most infrastructure, followed by cotton, and then lastly with bast fibers. So this is the same schematic, but on a slide. And you can see what exists industrially, artisanally, and where are there gaps. And so from our analysis, we really found 6 general areas that needed a lot of immediate support for the benefit of the entire ecosystem. We also look at tanning and hides because we want to make sure farmers are selling the whole animal and are finding a way to use every part of an animal and getting the highest value out of it so they can be profitable and reinvest in their businesses. So here's just a spotlight on wool as an example of one thing that we're looking at. And when you look at wool scouring, the early stage part of processing where you need to wash the wool, a lot of the wool is made in the West, but ironically, the 2 main scours in America are in Texas as well as on the East. So we're shipping wool all the way across country to have it washed and then sent back. So this seems like a really good opportunity on how can we move processing closer to where production is created. I really like this quote from Stephanie Wilkes. In California alone, more than 400,000 wool-producing sheep provided 2.6 million pounds of wool. However, the big surprise, the statistic that stunned me, only 0.03% of California's wool is processed within the state. I'm going to just foreshadow on some macro trends that we've been looking at that we're going to touch on with our distinguished panelists. The first is looking at the amount of jobs in local economies that are in the textile industry. And the United States lost 900,000 jobs during a 10-year span following '94. If you look at the percentage of American clothing that's produced domestically, in 1990, it was 50%, and in 2017, it was 2%, a 96% decrease. When we look at wages and the fast fashion industry, they've basically eliminated domestic jobs, handed them to workers abroad who are systematically exploited, and has wasted opportunities to use domestic fibers. I think a very telling stat is the average US garment worker makes about 38 times the wage of his or her counterpart in Bangladesh. Another topic we're going to touch on a little bit later is circularity. About 95% of clothing that is thrown away could be reused, recycled, or reworn, and only 15% of used clothing in the United States is recycled. This stat is something that keeps me up at night. The equivalent of one garbage truck of textiles is landfilled or burned every second. While I'm reading this sentence, approximately 4 garbage trucks of waste were created. And then another thing I just want to touch on is the falsehood of synthetic biology. There's this goal to use DNA engineering to create biological factories that produce designer organisms and compounds with green impacts. And we aren't really thinking about the potential unintended consequences. There's incomplete life cycle assessments, and the long-term biological and environmental impact is still unknown. And this isn't our first rodeo. We've seen this with BT cotton. A producer of genetically modified cotton introduced BT cotton into India in 2002, promising farmers more profit from higher yielding and insect repellent plants. The company sold farmers the cotton seeds and required chemicals, both of which must be repurchased each year, as the seeds cannot be saved and the chemicals are tailored to the genetic makeup of the crop. Initially, BT cotton produced an impressive yield, but over time, pests and weeds became resistant to the herbicide chemicals, as well as the genetically modified BT cotton. This led to farmers were forced to keep purchasing herbicides at larger and larger quantities to fight pests and weeds, making them completely dependent on the firm and bankrupting many. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen and appreciate the chance to share the amazing work that we've been doing at the Regional Fiber Manufacturing Initiative. But we couldn't be doing this work without people who are doing this day in and day out. And that's why I'm excited to introduce our panel. We're going to start with Italia Hannaway. Italia, would you be so kind to share a bit about yourself?
Hi, sure. Thank you, Adrian. I am a sustainable clothing designer, and I'm based here in, I'm in San Jose. I work out of my fashion studio here, and I locally manufacture my clothing in San Francisco. Everything that I make is zero waste, so I've really embraced responsible design, and I'm basically a sustainable fashion brand, and my brand is called Italia, a collection.
Thank you, Italia.
Welcome.
Taylor, would you like to go next?
Sure. Hi, thank you, Adrian. My name is Taylor J. I'm the founder of Taylor J Collection. I am located in Oakland, California. We have a women's contemporary brand. We are sustainable as well. We work with a lot of dead stock, and we manufacture locally. And we also have an in-house factory that is a new project. We're all about comfort and how creating a smart, responsible wardrobe can add value to your life.
Thank you, Taylor. Marissa, can you go next?
Sure, absolutely. Hello, everybody. My name is Marissa Nuncio. I'm the director of the Garment Workers Center in Los Angeles. You met my colleague Annie earlier and Santa earlier. I was with the Garment Workers Center in 2001 when we opened our doors, getting our campaigns and models started. I then left for a while to become a labor and employment attorney, and brought myself back to the Garment Workers Center 7.5 years ago. And I'm really excited to be here when we have sort of a renewed focus on supply chain accountability, fashion brand accountability. And I'm very happy to be here this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. We're so grateful for you to be here as well. John, would you like to go next?
Yes. Hi, everybody. My name is John Long, and I'm the production manager at the Carolina Textile District. I have a background in industrial design, specifically product design, and I explored and adventured through that realm of hard good products and fell into a role at Lee Jeans as the designer of their male tops line. And coming from this kind of industrial mindset, I've always been really deeply rooted in sustainability, and me and my wife both enjoy messing around with like natural dyes in our house and doing cool stuff like pickling things and just exploring really cool ways of preservation of sustainability. And I happily joined the Carolina Textile District because I wanted to explore and focus on that realm of sustainability more, and going to a more local and community driven focused program was just something that I've always been interested in. I really love being in the outdoors and enjoying hiking with my 2 dogs and my wife. So yeah, thank you.
Thank you, John. Kathryn, would you like to go next?
Hi, everyone. I'm Kathryn Ervin. I'm based here in Morganton, North Carolina, and I'm a storyteller with the Industrial Commons. My background is in the arts, studio art. I got a degree in painting and drawing from a state university here in North Carolina. And I went on to do some art teaching, and founded an arts nonprofit called TOSS in our town of Morganton. And I just care so deeply for these small rural communities. Morganton is a very small community in the rural South. And I feel that some of these spaces that feel like they're on the fringes and on the margins are places of great flourishing and opportunity. And so when I learned about the work of the Industrial Commons, I was really excited to join forces with them. And so I've been working with them for about a year, and I'm excited to share more about what we're doing at the Industrial Commons in collaboration with the Carolina Textile District as well.
Thank you, Kathryn. As we move into our moderated Q&A, I'm just going to call out themes that we're going to touch on with specific questions. So our first question is for Italia, and it's really around sourcing. So Italia, you made a line of clothing from climate beneficial wool sourced by Lonnie Estelle. I'd love for you to share with us what drove you to use climate beneficial wool, how was the experience, and what was the reception from your customer base?
Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you for asking, Adrian. My first encounter with Lonnie's climate beneficial wool was actually through a zero waste design challenge that was presented to me at Fashion Institute of Design and Merchandising in San Francisco. I had been completing my degree there, and during the last part of my studies there in fashion design, I was presented with a contest. And so I had never heard about, climate beneficial wool before, but the awardee would receive the yards for the design that won. So I happened to be the awardee of the cloth, and I had made a biodegradable jumpsuit, and I was awarded that climate beneficial wool. So from there, that was my first exposure, and I was able to work with it and sew with it, and really, kind of engage with the fabric, I guess you could say. And so I was really, I really enjoy working with the wool. I'm actually wearing a top from my winter collection, and from there, I, decided to make more pieces based off of my biodegradable jumpsuit, excuse me. And basically you know, I feel like it's been really rewarding for me because, you know, I've been able to make something that looks and feels beautiful, is fashionable, has style, and has also meaning behind the clothing. And I'm supporting circularity and sustainability, and I'm using zero waste design to start the production. So I think it's very complementary to have the climate beneficial wool for my products, because from the beginning to the end is my whole design concept is sustainable. And the third question you had was about the customer base reception. I am a small scale business, so customer base reception, I feel like I've gotten a lot of recognition from San Francisco during Sustainable Fashion Week. There was the United Nations came out and saw my design. I've also had articles in California, such as California Apparel News, where I've been able to showcase my design with Fiber Shed. And so I feel like I've gotten a lot of recognition just in general for the whole circularity and zero waste design processes that I do to support, you know, sustainability. Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Italia. And I'm a huge fan
You're
of that
welcome.
collection, and it's so elegant.
Thank you.
Our next question is going to be for both Kathryn and John, and it's really around production. The Carolina Textile District, the Industrial Commons, has been a huge source of inspiration for the Regional Fiber Manufacturing Initiative. So thank you for your leadership, and thank you for that inspiration. And I was lucky enough to interview some of your colleagues for a blog post that we wrote for Fibershed several months back. And there was this amazing sentence that really resonated with me. And it was, at the Carolina Textile District, we strive to be big by being small together. And this ethos made me think about the South African term Ubuntu, which is loosely translated to I am because we are. And as a phrase, it really speaks to the belief in a universal bond of sharing that connects all humanity. So as someone who, you know, personally who thinks that a federation of aligned co-ops could be the future of business, I'd love to hear about how the Carolina Textile District started and how it's evolved over the years. I would also be curious to hear about the advantages the co-op model has created for y'all.
Yeah, awesome. Yeah, I believe that phrase that you had mentioned is part of the larger Zulu phrase, which is a person is a person through other people. And you're totally right. The Carolina Textile District and the Industrial Commons as a whole is just such a beautiful thing, bringing local manufacturers together and leveraging all of their amazing skills. We're allowed to make beautiful and great things and really champion small businesses. People like you and me that want to create an amazing clothing line or a textile-based accessory and really lift it up to the people. And actually bringing the source and they're bringing the resources locally as well allows us to maintain this really small carbon footprint within our like 75-mile radius, although we help people beyond that. But yeah, you're totally right. We're really trying to strive to do big things, and we can only do that collectively.
And I can speak a little bit to the origin story if you'd like. So you had mentioned in your presentation the NAFTA and the offshoring of manufacturing in the 70s. So North Carolina is a hub for textile and furniture production, and we really felt that strongly in the 70s and 80s when all the offshoring occurred. And so while there was this disinvestment from our region, we still had hundreds of years of experience and people here who had high levels of expertise in this industry. And the Industrial Commons was founded as a nonprofit. It was founded by two local Burke County residents. Burke County is in the western part of the state, with really a direct desire to better our community, root wealth locally, and create more sustainable practices in the industry of textile and furniture manufacturing. So when they began in 2015, part of that work was creating this, this network, the Carolina Textile District. And it is a governed federation of mills that is run by a number of members who have the capacity to set the standards around sustainability and worker democracy in their spaces, and also be influential in creating those standards within our region. So it's really cool to think about how by all these entities coming together and working together, we're able to be a stronger entity. Our state is one of the least unionized states in the country. I think it's like the second least unionized. And I think there's really a need to consider how do we help those on the margins increase their agency and voice when they are so often neglected and put to the side. And that's really what the Carolina Textile District is achieving through its Federation of Mills.
Mm-hmm. And early in the beginning of the start, I think it was in 2008, one of our founders, Molly, started a company called Opportunity Threads. And it was the proof of concept of this bigger dream that she had of worker co-op style business. And Opportunity Threads is now a 75-person run manufacturing facility, Cutso, and they are worker owned. And seeing the beauty of that process and how it's uplifted the community as a whole and really exposed the workers to greater things is such a heartwarming event. There's a lot of programs beyond the actual cut-sew manufacturing facility, like training and courses outside of textiles, working to get high school diplomas, and bettering the community that way has really just been an impactful thing. And from that has spun off many other companies that solve different needs. And I'll speak more about that later on, but it's just a really exciting thing that we're doing, and it's bringing the community together, and it's inspiring people to be more sustainable.
We might be running out of time, but I just wanted to mention we have a really sweet little documentary. It's like 9 minutes long on our website, the Carolina Textile District, about our COVID-19 retooling initiative. And I think that project really proved out this model of the ability for smaller entities working together to pivot quickly is just profound. When you're a large monolith, it's hard often to make those quick transitions, but because the Carolina Textile District was able to be agile and nimble in a time of crisis, we were able to care for our community well through the production of masks and gowns quickly on a very large scale, and support the manufacturers here to keep their doors open during the first part of this pandemic. So check that out if you have a chance. It's a fun watch.
Thank you, John, Kathryn, and for everyone in the audience, if you haven't had a chance to check out either the Carolina Textile District or the Industrial Commons, go to their websites, look at their work. I remember when we were first getting started on the Regional Fiber Manufacturing Initiative, we were like, I wish there was an example we could learn from, and lo and behold, we found the perfect one. So they're a well of inspiration, and I think they're gonna really help influence what a regional textile economy looks like. We're going to move to Taylor now to really talk about how do we change consumer culture and to have them shift away from fast fashion into a regenerative fashion. So Taylor, when we connected, you mentioned that while sustainable fashion is becoming more mainstream, many people still don't understand its importance. How has Taylor J and your colleagues worked to educate its clients on the importance of responsible sourcing when making purchasing decisions?
Thank you, Adrian. For us, even for our company, sustainability was a new journey, a new path for us. Just myself, using fabrics that I, just personally fell in love with and felt good to my body, and getting the same response from customers allowed me to learn a lot more about sustainability and what that looked like. And so for Taylor J, our responsibility is to allow women to feel really good about themselves and to feel good in their garments, no matter what their personal lives or no matter what they're going through. And so one of the things I think we are able to introduce to our customers is smart shopping and responsible shopping and purchasing pieces that you can count on. So just that in itself, when you build a smart wardrobe, you're not you're not thinking of fast fashion. And when you have pieces that are timeless and they're versatile and they go the distance, that also introduces a younger audience, the younger consumer, into that same mentality that more mature consumers already have, because they really respect what they put on their bodies, and they typically fall in love with brands and pieces that they know work. And so for us, that's been a dream to just introduce that mentality and that thought to our consumers, our customer base, as well as fabrics that are just amazing, that that feel good. And then when they learn about what, you know, the meaning behind those textiles, then that just adds to it. For us, we are really into saving fabrics. Just even this year alone, I always say, like, the sustainable mentality saved our business. You know, like, we were able to make face masks from our cotton that was made from, you know, left over from the year before, that collection from the year before. And so, you know, just these practices, they really do benefit us in more ways than we know, you know. And so for the consumers, shopping smart, building smart wardrobes, and contributing to themselves by, you know, making good fashion decisions, I think we've done a really good job of teaching that, you know, just with our essentials alone. Those are pieces that you can always count on, and they come from great fabrics, and you're not shopping as much as you would when you're just buying, you know, fast fashion. Another thing is, a lot of the people that we've come in contact with, they have no idea. They haven't necessarily had the opportunity or been privileged enough to, you know, kind of step into the sustainable world, whether it be, you know, the price points or just the knowledge. And so as we learn and we go on this journey into the sustainability space, we are so thrilled to bring people with us and just to kind of educate them as we are educated ourselves.
Thank you, Taylor. We're now going to focus a bit on worker welfare. Marissa, we deeply appreciate the session earlier today from your colleagues. As we look to the future, how can we ensure domestic workers are making a living wage? What are steps that brands, employers, and customers can take to ensure that each part of the system is pushing towards that end goal?
Thank you. I really appreciate the question and this conversation. I think when we think of the solutions that we're working on, I often envision spokes in a wheel, you know, because there is not just one solution, right? We have to really look at the whole picture and what are, you know, a variety of approaches that we're taking and a variety of audiences that we're, you know, speaking to. I think for, you know, we have a really big focus right now on fashion brands accountability and supply chain, multilateral supply chain accountability is what we call it. Ensuring that everybody along the supply chain involved in manufacturing and assembling a garment is responsible for working conditions and work wages. I think with respect to brands, you know, we think it's very important that transparency is available. Transparency in where you're producing, and transparency in where your garments are being sewn. That allows your customers to be those smart customers that Taylor J was talking about, right? To make those decisions and really understand your brand, I think, and understand your brand's values. You know, we believe that fashion brands have to be accountable for the wages and working conditions in the supply chain they're using. As you heard from Annie earlier, that is simply not the case in right now, in largely because of fast fashion, but not only fast fashion, right? It's a larger problem in apparel production, that brands are allowed to wash their hands of responsibility in many instances. And they also need to really be cognizant of how much they're paying for the production that they're purchasing. What we have learned, at least in Los Angeles, is that the fashion brands that are producing locally are simply not paying enough, up to as low as half of what is necessary to enable factory owners to comply with minimum wage and overtime. So, you know, we think that that absolutely has to change. When we turn to employers, you know, I think I was thinking about this and like, what is the best answer here? And, you know, I think it's almost simplistic, but it's, what do you need to do as an employer to create a space that respects your workers' dignity? Not just their rights, but their dignity, because they are your workforce. They are, you know, they're your team. They're there producing your product, your brand, right? And so I think just simply making sure that they have, you know, a work environment that respects their human dignity is like the starting place. And I also think worker voice. Workers often have no voice, no democracy in their workplace. They are we see in, you know, LA factories, they're sort of just extensions of their machine. They're very much treated as extensions of their machine. And that's unacceptable. So, you know, how do you give workers the space and the forum to really, you know, be a part of your team and voice, you know, their goals and needs as part of your team? With respect to customers, I think, you know, there was a question in the chat earlier, you know, like, what can we do beyond boycotting brands? And I think that's a really important question. You know, boycotts are one thing, right? You know, they're one thing that a worker initiative, a worker campaign may eventually get to. But it's certainly not where workers are usually starting when they're demanding their rights. You know, our members, for example, are really asking consumers out there to use your civic power, use your voice to demand certain things, to demand of your electeds, of your, you know, political leaders, demand living wage policies. Make sure you're voting people in that would support worker rights and living wage policies, support those increases in local minimum wages so that people can earn a wage that supports them and their families. Demand robust enforcement of labor law. Right now, we simply do not have enough of that. And demand the resources that are necessary for it. So again, use your civic power, use your voice, and demand from the brands that you support, you know, by shopping your conscience, you know, shopping your conscience, demand that transparency. Support those brands that are telling you where they produce, right? You know, create the demand for that type of transparency. That is one way to shop your conscience. And then, of course, you know, think about, you know, as, you know, I just really, it resonated with me when you said, Taylor J, like, we try to provide like that, you know, what are those smart shopping options, right? And I think that I 20 years ago when I started this, I wasn't as confident that we would be there. I'll say that, you know, but I feel really heartened that we have consumers and, you know, a really widening, broadening sector of ethical, sustainable designers, manufacturers. Like, it's, you know, what exists now is very heartening. Where I think we can really educate consumers and we can actually provide options and choices that speak to different people. But, you know, we also, as consumers, we have to create that demand and say, this is what we want, right? We want to be able to feel good about what we put on our backs, you know, because we know we're not exploiting somebody. And I think continuing to shop your conscience and really, you know, support, buy local, buy, you know, buy ethical, buy sustainable, and just create that culture. I think we can do that. Thank you.
Thank you, Marissa. And I really appreciate all that context and the nuance behind that and how actionable that is. This is a plug for questions and answers. We will go in the Q&A in about 30 minutes or so, 25 minutes. There is at the bottom of your Zoom, a place that says Q&A. You can type your question in there. And then if you see a question that you like, that you want an answer to, you can hit the like button. And we're going to do questions based on which ones are resonating most with the audience. So if you have a question, definitely put it in there. And if you don't, but you want to look at the questions people are thinking about and you want to like the ones that most resonate with you, that'll kind of send it up on the Q&A list. So before we go into Q&A, a couple more questions for our panel. The next one is for Italia, and it's really about zero waste designs. And Italia, you have a unique approach to helping reduce and sometimes eliminate material waste at the designing stage. Can you please share a bit more about your design process?
Great. Yes, Adrian, definitely. I'd like to discuss my zero waste design approach. I'm a designer background, and so I feel like me creating my clothing through a responsible design approach is something that I really embraced. And also, I come from a pattern making background as well. And so for me, this whole approach to innovative design was really interesting. And I feel, very rewarding, by making a pattern that eliminates all waste. And then I find it challenging, which I like, because I have to imagine my design in shapes. So usually in a zero waste marker pattern, the whole entire design would be based on a rectangle or square or certain shapes to create a design. And so I just feel that my design process starts from the beginning, from scratch, from eliminating waste and supporting that circularity for the fashion industry, since there's so much pollution in the fashion industry. So I want to start from scratch because I'm able to do that. And I feel like all of my collection reflects, a fashionable way of having zero waste styles as well. And so it's almost just always challenging for me to do that. So I really like that. And, that's my commitment to sustainability, really, is that design process. And I really, love working with my local manufacturer in San Francisco. So I love to hear about Marissa, how you just talked about the garment workers. I'm so grateful to have them, and I love production team and working on a team with my designs and having that relationship. So I feel like without that, I just don't feel like I would be exercising the full and embracing the full sustainability commitment that I've done from beginning to end. And yeah, so that's pretty much the zero waste circularity initiative, sustainable commitment that I generate from the beginning of production in my design process.
Wonderful, and I really hope to see more and more designers taking that approach. We're now going to move to John and potentially Kathryn and talk about recycling and reuse. And John, in my earlier part about the RFMI and macro trends, I mentioned that in this country, as much as 95% of all clothes that are thrown out could be reworn, recycled, or reused. How is the Carolina Textile District and the Industrial Commons exploring ways to find more circular solutions to this problem?
Thanks, Adrian. Yeah, it's a very stunning statistic when you start looking at the numbers and actually understand the sheer density of waste that is generated. At the Carolina Textile District and the Industrial Commons as well, we are exploring a multitude of different ways to create and to facilitate our resources better. Looking at clothing as input of energy, it's really imperative to preserve that throughout the process. And one of the ways that we have changed our mindsets on this is looking at the industrial waste side of things. There is a spin-off company within ours called The Collection, And it's a very beautiful curated feature of clothing, garments, and also bags. And one of the projects that stands out to me and resonates towards this comment or question is our use of this horrible, very ugly fabric. It was very bright neon yellow with a very, very fluorescent blue. And what we did was took that fabric and over-dyed it. So we created this new fabric out of something that would have been thrown away. And that's featured in a couple of our different garments. And another way that we take our scrap and reuse is through this beautiful curated line of bags. This like lunch bag and a dop kit and a couple other bags that were to be scrapped from the furniture industry. And we took those beautiful patterned fabrics and created these really durable pieces that will last a very long time and serve that purpose. From a waste standpoint, we also have a company called Material Return, which I'm very, very excited about. Material Return right now is an aggregation facility. So they collect waste from industry, both large and small, from far and close. Currently, we are taking waste from a radius of 75 miles in North Carolina, and it's predominantly furniture industry waste. And we're grinding that material up into shoddy, which is just a general just waste product. And then we are going to be turning that into slither, which then can be turned into yarns. And turning that into yarn will successfully bring that waste to a higher level. Something that was valued more than what it was originally valued as, not monetarily, but just a product that can be used again. And also we're turning that waste into non-woven, which can then be turned into cushions, insulation, things of that nature. And then looking forward to the bigger problem that is caused by the industry that I once was in, which is just over excess of garments that can completely be used again for their intended purpose. And that energy that it took to get them to that point is preserved. We're wanting to launch programs that go around collecting those garments and reusing them and repurposing them in beautiful ways. So really trying to close those open-ended circles within the textile industry and create something that is of value again. With Material Return, we are working with larger companies right now to create products that feature their waste products. And that's also inspiring those larger companies to create these collection programs. Let's say it's socks or jackets or something that the consumer has used, abused, and loved for many years, and then can be brought back by Material Return and then ground down and turned into a viable base material again. It's very exciting stuff.
Really exciting indeed, John. Thank you for that. And so excited that the Industrial Commons and the Carolina Textile Districts are taking such a multifaceted approach to figuring out the problem of what to do with all this waste that is being generated.
Yes, yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's highlighting the small little circles and bringing them to larger ones. Very exciting.
I now want to move on to the topic of just the historical injustice around fiber in this country. And as we were going about the RFMI, the Regional Fiber Manufacturing Initiative, we came across the New York Times 1619 project. And I think through that project, I really learned how much of extractive capitalism was based on an extractive fiber system. And, Taylor, I wanted to come back to you in a conversation we had, which was sustainability has often been a focus of those with privilege to source their products in that manner. While many people would like to source sustainability, their life circumstances may not afford them the time or the resources to do so. So what can we do to ensure that in the coming decades, that a sustainability mindset is something that any person can embody and not just someone with privilege?
Yeah, thank you, Adrian, for this question and bringing up this conversation. I think that the first step to would be creating spaces that are in the communities that do not know much about sustainability. So that would be the first, I think the first move, because yes, of course, I know when I attend a lot of the sustainable meetings and the different groups, it's a lot of the same people that all have the same knowledge and the education, and it's circulating within the same community. But I think creating spaces or groups or people that mentor and kind of do intros to those that don't have access, that's major. A lot of my customers, one of my really good customers, she's like, oh, I never knew what a tinsel was, So there's so many people that would love to know, and even down to, Marissa, when you speak of like, local, like we're completely local. My factory, the manufacturer is right here in Oakland. Everything is here locally. And just when I would express that to our customer base, that really made them feel proud, especially people who are natives of the Bay Area, Oakland, for sure. They were like, oh my gosh, I'm wearing clothing that's made here, by you, designed by you. But in terms of like just getting it out to people that don't have access, definitely, creating spaces where people feel welcomed and they feel like they are being educated versus judged. That's one move. And then the next would be, maybe more affordable options. It's really expensive. A lot of people, there's certain people that just have access because they could afford it, and there's many people that they wish they could, and they practice sustainability by other ways. Maybe they shop and they do thrifting, or they they just do little things that they can control, but they can't necessarily afford the things that others can. And so I think that affordability is a huge issue, so I think, and Adrian, you said that you guys are working on, that and working with designers. And even for us, it's very costly to, purchase these fabrics. They're not they're not affordable. They cost money, right? And so that falls right into the consumer's lap. So I think, just these kind of conversations, having them with people that have no knowledge, and getting more questions and answering questions, and kind of just opening the platform to, hey, this is what we all need to do collectively to make a difference in our world, So if we really truly want to be sustainable and create this space where the world is a better place and safer, for all of us, we have to go out into those areas and those communities that don't have access and make them feel welcomed and educate. And that's my take on that.
Thank you so much, Taylor. And I've had a great learning experience over the last year on just thinking about equity and justice in our fiber system. And one of our colleagues, Teju, has just been absolutely incredible in guiding us in this exploration. And I think that the first thing that we all recognize here on the FiberShed team is that we need to just first understand and not move too quickly, and make sure that there's a really good level of understanding before we make decisions. One of the projects that you mentioned that we're thinking about is how can we provide sources of sustainable textiles to communities that may not be able to afford it. When thinking about an upstart brand, your working capital, your inventory of materials is really expensive. And if you're just starting out, you might have to default to the cheapest materials, not the most sustainable materials. So we're kind of exploring ways on how can we come up with a way that we could work with family offices or impact money or foundation money to create a pool of sustainable textiles that we can let upstart brands who don't have access to them get access to them. And then instead of having it be a loan that's accruing interest, have it be a revenue-based loan where once the brand actually sells the product and realizes revenue, that's when they pay back, and they're not holding the cost of all that working capital on their book. So, that is something that we're exploring intentionally to make sure that designers from all walks of life are able to work with sustainable textiles, not just the ones that have the most working capital. So thank you for sharing a bit about that work that we're doing. Marissa, I was hoping to go back to you. Oh, sorry, Taylor, did you have something that you wanted to say in response to that?
Oh, no, I was just saying no problem. Thank you.
So Marissa, I was wondering, what are policies that brands can adopt to ensure that worker welfare is a key consideration of sourcing decisions? Are there brands that partner with domestic cut-sew facilities in a manner that respects and fairly compensates workers that can be seen as people that should be emulated?
Mm-hmm. Well, I'll start with the policies. That's something that we're really focusing on this year. And this year, we introduced a bill that I think Annie may have spoken of a bit in her piece. It was a bill called the Garment Worker Protection Act. And it's actually a 20-year-old law that's on the books in California, where the intention of the law was always to allow workers to, if they were not paid their proper wages, to be able to bring a wage claim against their boss, and go up the supply chain to the fashion brands that were engaged in garment manufacturing. Unfortunately, it just didn't work. The law, many things in it worked, but many things didn't, including a big gaping loophole that didn't actually go and hold fashion brands accountable. And so we've come back kind of on the 20-year anniversary of that law. Our members introduced a law to clarify and say, no, brands were intended to be held liable. And this is the first step, a really important first step to transforming California's, garment industry. This is really important. We hear both from the workers and we hear from locally the network of fashion businesses that we have been building together with, that we can't survive, and you're talking about that now, but we can't survive if there's an unlevel playing field, if there's unfair competition. How do we pay properly and do the right thing when 90% of the field is not, right? And so, we want to respond to that, and we want, both workers and ethical business to be able to thrive in California. So that's where we are. That's a focus for us. We are in the second year of our bill campaign, our policy campaign, and we'll be reintroducing that bill in December. We almost got it, to the threshold this year, but not quite. Just didn't quite get there. We're coming back again. We think we have the legislative support and the community and the business support to do it. As I said, we've been building a network slowly and as meaningfully as possible, I think, with local business to learn about their models. What are you doing to consider the environment and the labor in your production? We've been listening to them, like, what are the challenges? Because we've thought a lot about, like, if we're a sweatshop watchdog group. Like, everybody knows, like, we're out there taking to the streets and supporting workers. And that's always going to be us. That's our heart and our culture. But we also think it's really important to partner with local business and that really have alignment with our values and ideals, and say, how do we work together? How do we listen together? And what are things that you may need to thrive that we as advocates can support, right? We can get out there, we can talk to the local city council and to the, county board of supervisors and state electeds. How can we work together to bring these things that'll help workers and business thrive? And we are really seeing that there's a desire to do that. And there are companies in Los Angeles that are doing the right thing, that are really, from small, tiny kind of boutique brands to larger ones like, Reformation, that are really trying, and I think have, I think we all have a way to grow to really be able to thrive. And we see tiny places like Nana Italia, and I just think that's exciting. I think that's really exciting. But our goal is, how do we? I think we're very excited by the fact that LA is becoming sort of a sustainable fashion kind of hub, and that's great. But how do we how do we make that not sort of a little niche, but like LA, just like really, and like all, that California can become known for that. How do we do that? That's our goal. That's our goal. And we, I think through our experience have learned, like, we really have to commit resources to not only fighting alongside workers, but fighting alongside those businesses as well. I think that's going to be the way that we do it.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that, Marissa. And, one thing that I've been thinking about is, what does regenerative mean? And to me, regenerative is not just about soil health, but you need to respect human communities as well in that. And as we have more and more people in Los Angeles, particularly those in the media who are, really pushing for a solution to climate change and a regenerative production, I really want to make sure that those people are also including worker welfare in that, because to me, you can't have a regenerative economy if it's just about ecological health when the health of our communities are deteriorating. So I think there's a really unique opportunity in LA especially to make sure that all those influencers, all those people in the media are not just behind carbon sequestration, but are also behind worker welfare and justice. I have one more prepared question, but before I do, we have 18 beautiful questions in the queue. So if you haven't had a chance to go through them and like one, please take this moment to do so. I've also seen some questions flow through the chat box. And if you have put in a question in the chat box that you really want to ask to the panel, I just request that you take that question, paste it into the Q&A chat. And at the bottom of your screen, it says Q&A, and it's right next to the chat button. So just a request for people who've been submitting questions in the chat opposed to the Q&A part of Zoom. So the last question we have is for Kathryn, and it's really about enrolling the broader community and taking this out of our own communities that are close to us and really making sure we have broader community participation. And so Kathryn, I'd love for you to touch on the importance of the participatory nature of the Carolina Textile District and the importance of workers having a voice in the systems they work in, especially in areas of the country that might have political tension between differing parties.
Oh, that's such a rich question and so complex. So I just wanted to mention two things about our co-founders. Sarah Chester and Molly Hemstreet are the co-founders of the Industrial Commons in the Carolina Textile District. And Sarah comes from a more traditional economic development entity, and she founded a pipeline program for students into manufacturing. And the first summer she rolled this program out, she had high school students doing internships with these manufacturers. And at the end of the summer, they had worked on the floor, and they had come back to her, and she's like, "All right, who's ready for a career in manufacturing?" And every single student said, "Not me." They all had experienced just such dehumanization in those spaces. It wasn't the work, it wasn't how much they were working or how hard they were working, the conditions, it was more how they were treated and how they felt suppressed, their voice had been suppressed in those spaces. And so that really fueled her to found with Molly Hemstreet, the Industrial Commons in the Carolina Textile District. And Molly, as John had mentioned, coming from Opportunity Threads, really wanted to think about alternative and creative models for investing power in those working class folks who really have the most expertise, honestly. Those people on the floor who have all the knowledge and the expertise from decades of working with even this transnational knowledge from the Guatemalan community who lives here in Morganton. About 20% of our population in Morganton is Mayan Guatemalan, and they come from a very strong textile sort of heritage and history. And so there's such wisdom and expertise right here. And I think the challenge is then, how do you not extract that knowledge, but really celebrate it and hold it up and give it the rightful place it deserves? So everything that we do within our either our networks or our nonprofit is participatory. So whether it's design charrettes, where we're designing products for collection, the workers are the ones who decide, like, how does that backpack look? Is it going to have a lot of gadgets, and is it going to have a lot of pockets? No, that's going to be cost prohibitive. So we're going to design together a backpack that's going to be, you know, a beautiful design, but also like something that a high school student could afford. When we think about the spaces we inhabit and embody, we have charrettes for that as well. Just actually this past week, we are moving into a large disinvested facility in Morganton. It's been empty for a while, and our whole team last week came and walked through the space and worked on these different prompts together to think about how do we make it welcoming, how do we create like inclusivity, but also affinity in that space where we feel like we are celebrating our collective culture, but also have the space that we can feel proud in and celebrate as our, you know, distinct selves. So I think when you want to highlight, you know, the worker voice and give workers agency, you have to give them the platform. And that is expensive, it's time consuming, it's difficult, but I think nothing beautiful in this world can be achieved without struggle. And that's something that I think day to day about our work, is that it's very difficult, but it really is so worth the time and energy that it takes to create these more democratic processes. And then just really quickly, I wanted to say another thing about workplace democracy. We have a suite of programs that go into different companies in our region to help them see the value of workplace democracy and worker voice. So we have these worker committees that help to highlight suggestions and expertise from the floor up to the middle manager, and then really where is the power, and help to create this pipeline for workers to really share their vision for their working lives with the people who have the power. That's about it.
Thank you so much, and there's so much beautiful nuance there, and it is such a complex issue, and appreciate the model that you all have set. So we have about 10 minutes left in our panel, and we have 20 beautiful questions in the Q&A. Clearly, we will not be able to get through all 20. If you do see a question that resonates with you, you are empowered, I believe, to put an answer in there and to have good dialogue between the people who have posted that question. But I'm going to start with a question that was posed by Cecilia, and her question is, I'm also curious about the effects of NAFTA. How can we build a fibershed movement without resorting to nativism? Free trade isn't necessarily a bad thing. It just has to be implemented responsibly. And Nick Wenner, one of my amazing colleagues, added, similarly, what does it look like to pursue regionalization in a way that supports the economic vitality of those regions that are currently serving our needs, acknowledging that the current situation is often exploitative, but playing real economic roles for the people and those places? So anyone on the panel, does anyone on the panel feel empowered to answer that question?
I can speak just a little bit. Yeah, I'm not a NAFTA expert by any means, but I can just share that I think one of the principles of cooperative development is co-ops helping co-ops. So there is an emphasis on localization and helping like an entity or a specific region to build wealth within its own self. But then apart from that, there's this, I think, cooperation that happens between these ecosystems. We recently are hosting a conversation between our cooperative ecosystem here in North Carolina and others. There's one in Asheville, actually close by, Poder Emma, that we really love and is growing quickly. And then talking to experts who are doing cooperative development in Finland or in Spain, it's very helpful to connect in this broader way. And I think by doing that, you're able to share resources, and even forums like this where you're able to connect with others and share the wealth, I think is part of the cooperative model. And we use this interesting term quite a bit, coopetition, to talk about the Carolina Textile District being an entity that works together, but also competes together for the greater good.
Thank you so much for that. And
Hey, Adrian,
believe John,
it's Gavin. I'm so sorry. I just wanted to let everyone know that we're going to be going to full panel so that everyone's going to be on screen at the same time. So in the last, few minutes we have here, that everyone will be able to, you'll be able to bounce around more easily to be able to answer the questions. But it's a really interesting and exciting panel. So we just want to make sure that we get all the questions, as many questions as we can, as we head to 11:40.
Perfect. Thank you, Gavin. Just keeping it moving on the Q&A front, I'm going to combine these next two questions. The first one is, do Italia or Taylor have any advice for designers who want to start a sustainable brand? And then Taylor, would love to hear more about your work pool and how you are mentoring talent in Oakland.
I can answer the second question, and Italia, I'll allow you to take the first one. So in Oakland, we had, of course, this year, we had so many amazing things on the calendar. I myself, I feel as if I've been given the platform to be a mentor to many. I was a teen mother myself. So my background and my introduction into fashion was part of, I feel like, a savior for me. It saved me in a lot of ways. So we are actually in the process of beginning some trainings with some youth that we will roll out in the top of 2021. But for now, we have a very tight team, like our in-house. We have one of our team members is a student, fashion student. So we're really into on the job, like actual, like me, like I'm a self-taught designer. I didn't go to school for it. So I really believe that the best way to learn is to actually do the work. And so we kind of, that's what we live by. You know, you learn best by doing the work. And so we want to create a lot of programs like that for the youth, and more of an intro to fashion and to careers that can help to really, just strengthen our community. I hope that answered the question.
Great,
Thank you, Taylor.
Taylor.
Over to you, Italia.
Yeah, that's great to hear that you're doing community work towards, the youth. I think that's really cool. So my question was advice for any designers who want to start a sustainable brand. It's basically a lot of work, and Kathryn was talking about that as well. And but nothing comes, out of, nothing really comes to you easy unless you work for it. So if you really want to start a sustainable brand, I think a lot of it is researching about textiles. I think using the right textiles for your design is so important. And, I think that's the foundation really of your brand is your textiles. Starting a brand, I think putting creativity first as a designer is number one. Because if you don't have that, for me, I wouldn't have my brand. So I think, staying true to your passion is number one. And then researching is number two. And then, being, valuing your consumer and understanding, your product and the community, I think is definitely the whole circle. Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Talia.
Mm-hmm.
Gavin, I think you mentioned that we might have some slides you wanted to touch on before we wrap.
Yeah, we just I think Taylor has 4 slides. Just wanted to take about 60 seconds, if possible, just to quickly go through them. I'm sorry we didn't have enough time to go over them, but many of us at Fibershed thought these were really great and would be relevant to the conversation.
Italia.
Yeah.
Taylor, do you have slides as well?
Yes, I have a couple images they have. I think
Okay.
like maybe
Yeah,
3.
let's do a few of Italia's and then just 60 seconds if you want to just talk to them really quickly. And then we'll pop over to Taylor's after that really quickly.
Great.
Okay, Italia.
Italia,
Oh,
if you
hi.
wanna-
I'm sorry. Yeah. This is my recent photo shoot, and this was a collaboration with Lonnie's Climate Beneficial Wool. And we had a beautiful shoot at Black Mountain Ranch and in Petaluma. So basically, you know, my design philosophy and values for my clothing, you know, is responsible design, manufacturing through zero waste and supporting that circular low waste ideology. I feel very fortunate to present my winter collection as a mini collective collection with Fiber Shed using their cloth, community cloth. And this is, you know, an accessory item. I was able to work with the fox fiber and from Sally Fox, and it's just, you know, about being creative right now for me and really exploring the regenerative textile that I am able to use for my winter collection. So I really wanted to zone into the comfort and the style. And you know, it's very simplistic and minimalistic. I wanted to also include inclusivity into my designs. And my t-shirt is a t-shirt dress, and it's made of bamboo and organic cotton. And I'm going to be launching in December a curvy girl line that goes up to size 22, and it's going to be launched in Australia. So I'm kind of just trying to reach like a global market and just, you know, really, you know, setting an example for diversity, inclusivity, sustainability, and, you know, doing what I love. So
That's great. We're
my
just
winter collection. Thank you.
it's really, really beautiful. And we'll just move over to Taylor, Adrian, if that's okay.
Perfect.
Great. And we'll just, same thing, Taylor, we'll just buzz through each one, probably like 10 or 15 seconds. Just give us some insights and then we'll move on.
Okay. Okay, so this is my collection. The first image is the cotton collection, which from 2019, which is inspired by my ancestors. And so they're all cottons, very beautiful, Victorian inspired fit. The second image is the cotton mask that we actually made this year from the leftover fabric from the previous collection. They're really great. They're an extension of our brand. The inside has French terry, so it's really soft to the skin, and it's just a fashionable, comfortable way to stay safe. The next image is, this is part of our Work From Home by Taylor J collection. The Robbie dress is one of our favorites because we are very much into inclusivity. So we are a brand that works with women in their journey of life, womanhood, no matter what you're going through. Our sizes are, you know, change very easily. So our pieces accommodate women throughout their journey. And the final image is one of our oversized, beautiful scarves, great for traveling, all made from cotton with the matching cape. So our pieces are very flowy, comfortable, beautiful, and stylish. And I think that women are able to find themselves, their own style and their comfort within them.
Thank you so much. We're going to bring in Rebecca, Adrian, and if you want to thank the panel and chat with Rebecca, we're going to move towards the break.
All right.
Wonderful. Well, I just want to give a thank you to John, Kathryn, Taylor, Marissa, and Italia. I'm inspired deeply by all the work that you're doing and so grateful that you're part of this regional textile ecosystem. Thank you for your time. Thank you to the Fiber Shed team and everyone in the audience. Back to you, Rebecca.